Hello and welcome back to I Literary Can't Even. I'm Kyra Lennon and I'm here with Clare Dugmore.
Hi.
And Paula Gravo.
Hello.
Right, so usually we're quite well known for our funny banter in bookish topics, but this week we wanted to talk about something a little more serious. Because if you Google mental health statistics, you're inundated with figures and graphs. In 2013, there was an estimated 43.8 million adults aged 18 or older in the US with any mental illness in the past year. This represents 18.5% of all US adults. In 2013, an estimated 15.7 million adults aged 18 or older in the US had at least one major depressive episode in the past year. This represents 6.7% of all US adults. 1 in 4 people in the UK will experience a mental health problem each year. Talking in thousands and millions, it's hard to get lost in numbers, but when you think about it like this, it's likely that at least one person in your life has a mental illness, and that's pretty worrying. It could be your mum or your brother or your wife or your colleague. It could be you. Mental illness doesn't discriminate and anyone can be affected by it. And yet so many of us feel alone, which is funny because so many of the writing, blogging and reading community identify as having some sort of mental health issue. It's almost as if people with mental health issues are drawn to creative pursuits, maybe as an escape, maybe as a way of coping. But even though it's common and there's a community of people with similar issues and experiences, mental health is still so greatly misunderstood and stigmatised.
Okay, this is a thing we've been discussing for a while, because a lot of, as Claire said, a lot of creative people who have anxiety or depression issues, they tend to produce some incredible work.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I guess the question is, are the two related at all, or is it just a crazy fluke?
Well, I think that, it goes back for centuries, and in fact, it goes back to philosopher Aristotle saying, no great genius has ever existed without a strain of madness. So apparently they were grasping with this idea for centuries. So
that's a great quote.
I definitely believe that. I think you look at so many creative people that are regarded in their field as geniuses, like Kurt Cobain, for example.
Oh, that dude.
He's highly regarded in the rock industry, and he ended his life by suicide.
Mm-hmm.
There was, I think it was a couple of years ago, I'm trying to think who it was now, game developer Peter Molyneux was talking about how many people, the development team and stuff, all had mental health issues, and I don't think it's coincidence that many people in creative fields have mental health issues. They must be drawn to it.
As a person who suffered with anxiety, I guess I think for myself and for many other people, the creative thing is an escape.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I have depression and anxiety issues too, and both reading and writing are like huge helps for me.
It's just that I guess immersion in a whole other world is the thing to escape from.
Yeah, it's escapism. It's you can block out whatever is wrong in your life for a while and escape somewhere else.
I've always wondered whether does the creativity trigger the depression, or is the depression what makes the creativity better?
I've never thought of it that way. I've always thought maybe it's just part of it is the escape, and I suppose part of it is an overlap with creative people and people with mental illness. Some of it maybe is coincident. I'd never thought of it the other way round, though, that maybe the insecurities of or the worries of your creative pursuit not being right causing depression. I've never looked at it like that.
It's one of the things that's always interested me, because when you think of anyone who is great in art, music, theatre, they also, a lot of them suffer from crippling anxiety. And I always wonder whether it is a fear of not being good enough that actually triggers the depression.
What about the idea that the sheer volume of ideas in their mind may go ahead and trigger some of these, because think about it, it's not only depression. When you're talking about mental illness, that's a whole different can of worms.
Absolutely.
You're talking about bipolar. For example, like someone like Robin Williams is a perfect example. If you've ever
I was just thinking of him.
Well, you see his comedy, and someone asked him one time, do you script anything that you do? And everything he did was off the cuff, without a script, without anything. He would just go off. And it was almost like a manic episode you were watching. So in a way, his sheer volume of ideas that were going through his head at one time is so overwhelming. It was like he was having a manic episode while he was kind of expelling comedic moments. And I think that maybe some of this type of depression or anxiety or even bipolar diagnoses are related to the fact that people who have very highly creative brains are also wired a little differently than the average person. It's not enough to say, oh, I'm depressed, I'm going to write the next great novel or write the next great song.
I don't think anyone was suggesting that it was that simple. But
No, it's not. No, and I'm not trying to make it simple, but I think that there's something, like you take a person like Michelangelo or a Beethoven, who was a very dark person. I mean, he was deaf and he was able to compose amazingly, but these are people that were highly creative to be, as you're asking, is it a chicken before the egg or whatever?
Yeah.
I do believe that they were depressed individuals, but I also think that the depression comes from having such powerful and creative abilities.
it is interesting, though, how people with mental health issues tend to gravitate towards the more creative. And maybe
it is. It's fascinating.
Well, and I think you're right, Kyra. I think you hit the nail on the head saying how the people with mental health issues, it's a way to kind of escape. And by escaping, they're able to just focus on being creative. And that gives them kind of a way to channel their additional thoughts into something very productive.
Poets particularly often seem to have a kind of dark side. If you look on Instagram, there's oodles and oodles of poetry, and much of it stems from times they've been hurt or from depression. And so it does seem as, a really good way to channel that. And it's good for people to put it out there, because it lets other people who might think they're alone realise that they're not, and that someone actually does understand what they're going through. And that's
that is a very good benefit of it.
Right, because a lot of people, as you said at the start, it's still quite stigmatised. People are getting slowly more open with it, but for the most part,
no one... It's still a struggle, though.
No one openly, straight out wants to say, hey, I have this issue, can you help me? And maybe, I don't know, maybe some people are just more private and they just don't want people to know, whether it's...
Well, there's definitely that, but then there's, people who don't reach out to anyone for help. Obviously, there's a difference between broadcasting it on every social media platform.
Sure.
But some people feel too ashamed to even go to their friends or family because of the way it's stigmatised.
Right, and I know that was a big issue for me, because I never... When I first had anxiety, I was 14. And at 14, you don't really know what the hell's going on.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially when you can't pinpoint what might have even caused it. And when I was at school, I used to have panic attacks in class, and I used to have to leave the class. And oftentimes I wouldn't be able to go back. I'd have to just wait outside until it was over, and hopefully it wouldn't happen again the next time. And what was starting to happen to me was that people were obviously noticing that I couldn't make it through a lesson.
Yeah.
And very quickly, instead of being supportive, almost all of my friends decided that it was more fun to mock me rather than ask what was wrong. I had people mocking the fact that I would cry sometimes because I just didn't like what was happening to me. People would mock me for crying. People would mock me for leaving the room. And people I didn't care about, it's not an issue. People who were supposed to be my friends, it was a problem. I had literally 2 friends left who didn't do that. 2 out, and I had a pretty big group of friends when I was at school. And obviously that didn't make matters any easier. That said, while I was going through it, I kind of hated them. Mm-hmm. But once I was on a more even keel, and some of them apologised, some of them just thought everything would go back to normal, and it kind of did.
Yeah.
Because for me, I was just glad I was feeling okay again, and I understood for them it was weird. And the reason
you don't know how to process that sort of thing as a teenager.
I think the reason they did it, and some of them genuinely said to me, look, I'm sorry, I really just didn't understand what was going on, and it's fine.
Yeah.
It sucked at the time and it made me miserable, but kids, And then I was fine for a long time. I would always occasionally have a panic attack now and again throughout my life, but nothing life control-y.
Mm-hmm.
Until I was 23, and then everything went to shit in a very dramatic fashion, whereby I was so agoraphobic I could not even leave my bedroom for a very long time.
Oh my gosh.
Walking across the hall to the bathroom stressed me out. Going downstairs to eat food stressed me out. I couldn't go in the garden. Too hard. Everything was too hard. I wanted to stay in my room. And it was horrendous. Anyone who's listening who's been through it will understand, but there's really no real way to describe the terror that you feel when you have to do something like leave your bedroom when it feels like the only safe place. And it wasn't a case of I was scared I was going to get hurt. There was no logical thing to my fear. I was just afraid. All I knew was that I was afraid. And obviously to people who have never been through it, I'm sure it's like, really, what's wrong with you? You're a weirdo. But there is no logic to mental health either.
No, there isn't.
That's the real bitch to it. If you could work it out and untangle it as a logical thing, it would be awesome. You could just go, okay, well, this is the problem. This is where it started. This is how I fix it. End of story. But, that's not how it works. I found my sanctuary in a Harry Potter forum back then. I read the books. I liked the books. I joined a forum. I started to meet people. Much to my immense joy, that was where I met Clare, and thank the sweet Lord I did. And I made a lot of friends there. And they were my encouragement on how to get out of the depression, because I didn't want to have nothing to tell them. I didn't want to be that person who was like, they say to you, hey, what have you been up to? And it's like, nothing. I've been sat here answering questions about Harry Potter for the last 4 days. I wanted to say, hi, I went out today and I did this and I saw this and I took a photo of this. And that was what I did. I started to use photography as my thing to prove I'd done stuff. Just having that extra motivation was the start of me getting better. Now we're quite a lot of years on. Let's not say that number. It's quite big. And it never goes away. Not completely. There have been times when it has gone away. Right now, things are a bit iffy. But they've never been as bad as they were back then. And it's not a great thing to live with, but also you have to work out how not to let that define you and ruin everything. You have to find your own way to tiptoe around it. And even if it doesn't go away, because quite often it doesn't ever completely leave you, as long as you can try and stay in control as best as you can, it's okay.
When you were a teenager, how did adults react to it?
Do you mean like my family or teachers or any
family,
adults?
Teachers, just any adults really?
Teachers were actually very good for the most part. I had one dickhead teacher who thought it was fun to mock me in class, which would not fly these days.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, FYI, these days
terrible.
he would probably have been fired. But he would make reference to my anxiety in front of the whole class, which was not cool.
No, unacceptable.
Yeah, these days that would get him in shit. But back then, 100 years ago when I was a teenager, he was the only one who was bad. My form tutor and my head of year was great. Principal was great.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Most of the other teachers were cool. Probably not many people in my family really knew about it. My mum and my gran for the most part. And my uncle as well, because I had counselling when I was 14 and my uncle used to take us because it wasn't in our town and my mum didn't drive, so my uncle used to take me to the counselling sessions. I think my mum was blindsided, as I think you would be when you can't really pinpoint an issue, and she would also say like, what's caused it, what's the problem, and again, that wasn't anything that she was doing wrong. It was just, even back then, even though it wasn't really that long ago, people just assumed that there had to be something that happened recently that would have caused this problem. And
a trigger or something.
And as
sometimes it can be, but other times it is just a case of brain chemicals are messed up.
Brain chemicals, and even past stuff. For me, it was past stuff. So, you just don't know when it's going to hit. And I think that's another thing that you have to always remember, that if something traumatic does happen to you and people do offer you counselling, and you think you don't need it, you might not need it, but it never hurts to just take a couple of sessions just to see.
Yeah, you never know when that sort of thing is going to creep up on you.
Right, but for the most part, adults were pretty cool.
See, I had a different experience with adults, and I think it might be because of the person I was at the time, because I had depression issues when I was younger, like 15 and stuff, but they really were the worst probably when I was in my late teens.
Okay.
And this was also when I was a goth and listening to rock music. Right. So, of course, everyone's assumption then was, it's the type of music you're listening to.
Right.
It's that you're wearing black and you're doing it for attention and stuff. And it's like, well, no, actually, I'm doing this stuff, like listening to this music, and because it connects with how I'm feeling at the moment, not this music is causing it. So, and that was a bit weird, like kind of having even healthcare professionals and stuff almost insinuating that it wasn't real and it was just kind of a phase.
Yeah.
And I was just being a moody teenager.
Right, then I think that was always the assumption that it's just your hormones are fluctuating, and clearly you'll get over it when you're 21.
Back then, a lot of people who had depression or some sort of mental health issue in their teen years, it was just labelled as like, oh, it's teenage stuff, you'll grow out of it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, you find out as an adult, well, no, actually this is bipolar or depression or another issue manifesting when I was a teenager. But thanks for not noticing.
Yeah, cheers. It's interesting that you said about the music that you listen to, though, because I know that when I was feeling sad, I would listen to music that made me sad, which didn't help.
Yeah.
Actually, it didn't, obviously the music didn't cause it, but the music definitely didn't help me.
No, I more think, I can't remember whether the music helped or not. Sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't. But I think it was what helped a lot. And this is probably why writers congregate together and stuff. That feeling of community. I think I was always a little bit weird at school. So when I left school and discovered rock clubs and stuff, it was really great to see these people that were the same as me, and like being able to say to someone, well, like, I'm depressed, and them not going, oh, it's just a phase, or oh, you fucking weirdo, but like going, shit, me too.
Yeah.
So that was really helpful.
That's definitely a good thing. It's good that you found somewhere that you could, you know, where you could go and feel accepted. And
yeah, that's, well, and the hardest thing I think is you're growing up. I didn't suffer with depression growing up. I struggled greatly with fitting in. My problem was I was always on my own program, and I did not dress like everybody else. I did whatever the hell I wanted. And it took a toll on me to the point where I didn't have a lot of friends. I was I was a tennis player, and that's all that mattered to me, my school grades and my tennis, because if I didn't do well in school, I couldn't play tennis.
Yes.
And as I got older, you know, it's hard, because it's a hard path to take to be your own person. And my God, when there's so many people wanting to fit in and be with the popular crowd, that it was hard. It really was. What happened to me last year, the last 3 years, I have learned a lot about depression, and a lot of it didn't have anything to do with me from a standpoint of, I'm a pretty happy person, but I went through a horrible struggle with chronic migraines that, as Kyra knows all about it, we kind of met under these circumstances. I literally could not function and could not work because of this.
Jesus Christ.
It was horrible. They finally, I felt like I was in Nazi Germany with their medical tests. I went through Botox treatments. I went through this pain center where they stuck me with every needle. They tried all these ridiculous things with the spine, the needles, and everything. It was just, there were a lot of treatments, and they thought I had MS. I had a spinal tap, and that depresses you enough, because I try to always be positive, and all that, you when they said, oh, you might have MS, I finally said, that's it. I want to know what test I have to take that'll finally put you off of this path. So they told me, okay, we'll give you a spinal tap. So I took my spinal tap. It was negative, thank God. But it's one of those things where, as crazy as this is going to sound, I almost hoped I did have it, then it would explain what was going on.
Sure.
But then when they said it was negative, yes, it was like everybody was so thrilled that it was negative. I was still like, well, but then what is it?
Yeah.
So they finally isolated it to hormonal issues, and I ended up with a total hysterectomy. As great as that was, and it helped my migraines, I went into a very deep depression, because just picture this.
Imagine.
Normally, when women go into, the change of life and everything, you do it gradually. Literally, I went in one day, and within basically 5 hours of that surgery, I was put into surgical menopause. So my hormones went, I would call it like having a video game when they call it tilt on a pinball machine.
Yeah.
That's how I felt. Kyra will tell you, I felt like one minute there were times that I wanted to cry and not stop crying. The other minute I wanted to strangle somebody. It was the most awful feeling. It was literally like I was on a teeter-totter of emotions, and this is so not me. So finally, they did regulate my hormones, and I felt like literally my life is back. I'm able to, be the sunny, happy person I was. I feel like, it's awful just not being able to control your emotions. So when people talk about depression, I have a different standpoint about it. I know everybody gets blue. That's a normal thing.
Yeah, sure.
But being so down for months, there were times, honestly, I can say this without a problem anymore. I understand when people talk about wanting to commit suicide, I get that now. You get to a point where it's like, is this the best it's going to be?
Yeah.
Can I ask both of you guys, because I don't know if I answered this properly, but when you were at your lowest points, did you feel the need that you had to try and hide it from other people?
Yes. That's really funny how we both just said that and no hesitation.
Yes, definitely. I don't know about you, Claire, but it's like I've always been viewed as somebody who's so happy, so up, so smiley that I felt like I had to hide it because I didn't want questions. I didn't want to be, I didn't want people going, oh, what's wrong? My feeling was always people in your life, with the exception of your friends, they ask you how you're doing, and they don't really want to hear, oh, I'm not feeling well or anything.
Yeah.
They just want to hear, oh, it's fine.
Yeah, I'm good.
So I felt like, yeah, I'm good. Exactly. So that was one feeling, and the other thing is the stigma of it. I really, it feels like, I felt like, oh my God, if I say something's wrong, then I feel like I'm not a strong enough person to deal with it. I'm being weak, that kind of thing. So yes, I would say
It is a funny thing how anxiety tells you stuff about yourself that's completely inaccurate.
Absolutely.
And I know both of you guys...
Spreads poison.
It does. Both of you guys, for me, I mean, last week I was maybe not in the best head state. And what both of you guys do for me, completely selflessly, and for no, just because you're my friends, is you stop and you'll go, hang on a minute. You need to stop that because of this. You need to remember the things that you have achieved. You need to stop telling yourself you can't do stuff and remember the things you've already done. And that's what you need sometimes. Sometimes you do need to tell someone who's going to be able to help you just reset your brain into the right place.
Yeah, someone that's going to be able to understand and not just brush it aside and not just give the generic, oh, well, have you tried being happy?
Yeah,
have you
smile.
tried doing this and stuff? It's like, well, obviously I've tried that, but sometimes it doesn't work. And sometimes you do just need someone else just to give you that little gentle nudge and say, just remember, don't lose sight of the positives.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. That's true. I feel like I know exactly what you mean, Kyra, because I think sometimes, especially with you, when I hear you say that, or any of my friends, you're a very special person, and you have to remember what you've accomplished, because I think we don't always see ourselves the way other people see us, and that sometimes you need to take pause and listen to our view of you, and not so much.
These are the times you need someone from the outside to say, well, actually, your inner voice is stupid. Don't listen to it. Listen to this.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I feel like we all need that pep talk from good friends, and it helps.
Yeah, it really does. And I think it's very important to have people around you that you can reach out to at any time, and they're not going to turn away. And they're going to be what you need.
The other thing is also, though, not to turn this into a depressing area, but we also realise that some days that isn't enough. Some days it's too hard, and those are the days when you need to kind of check and think, okay, well, that's when you need to really be brave and think about getting some, genuine, real help, and that's okay too. Yeah,
I think that you do get to a stage when no matter how much you talk it through with a friend or something, it's not getting better, and you need to go to another level and see a doctor or something.
Definitely. And I think my point really was that a lot of people still are quite nervous about doing that. I've seen people on Facebook even saying, I really don't want to go to the doctor, and you you just have to realise that if nothing else has worked, if talking it out hasn't worked, if time hasn't made you feel better, if changing your diet, if doing more exercise, whatever it is that you've tried, if none of that is working, then you have to just take a deep breath and just go for it, because
really
no one is going to think any less of you. Your doctor certainly won't.
Oh no, God no.
No. Well,
and sometimes it can be the most amazing thing. I know, Kyra, you will remember, I'm trying to think when this was. It was probably 2010-ish when I was having a very bad time, like depression and stuff. And eventually, after a few people had said to me, go to the doctor, see about going on medication, eventually I realised, yeah, they're right, I've got to do that. And I did. And once the medication kicked in and stuff, so much changed. My mood lifted, the type of person I was changed, and eventually, like, because of all that change, I was able to, like, get a job and focus on things in a way I hadn't before. And so no matter how difficult it feels, it's really important to make that step, because once you find the right help, it changes your life.
It does. And I'm not afraid to admit, I fought like a bitch against going to the doctor. I didn't want to go. I didn't want the medication. I don't need the medication. I'm going to be fine. I can do this. And it's like, yeah, you can't. Yeah. And I cried. The first time I had to take a tablet, I cried. I sobbed. I sobbed like it was the end of the world. I had to take medication to make myself better. But what's the option? The alternative is that you just stay unhappy. And to me, taking that tablet was the reason I cried, because I felt weak, and I felt stupid, and I felt like I was pathetic for having to rely on the medication. But ultimately, you have to, if you had a different illness, a different kind of illness, and you had to take a tablet to make yourself feel better, you don't make yourself feel guilty over it. You just take the tablets and then you're better. And
so if you're diabetic and you have to inject insulin or something, you don't see it as a weakness. It's something you have to do.
Yeah.
And that's the point, and this is where stigma comes in, and it makes me so angry. I mean, when you talk about having pneumonia, you've got to take antibiotics. Do you curse yourself for that? No, you don't. And that's the same thing. I feel like it's funny because for these migraines, and I think I told Kyra this, and everybody screamed at me for doing this because I'm an idiot, and I pulled the same stunt. I got myself all off the migraine medicines when I had the hysterectomy. I'm like, I'm not
it's better
anything.
Now,
it's better. I can handle this. And I really set myself back horribly. And then I realized, well, you know what? Maybe they really kind of did help.
People with depression often get told, well, you should think positive. And it's very hard to do when you're depressed.
Yeah.
And also, think positive is not... It's not a helpful piece of advice when you've got genuine depression. But,
no, it isn't.
Well, no, because sometimes no matter what you do, you can't, like, turn off the depression.
Right. Gratitude is huge. If you can find something every day to be grateful for, it won't make your depression better, but it's important to keep focus on what's important to you, what you have in your life, because oftentimes I think people, not any people, all people take stuff for granted and they forget what matters.
Oh, for sure.
And so while you should never ever tell a depressed person, hey, just think more positive and you'll be fine.
Oh no.
It definitely does have an improvement. If you take it, you have to take it slow. You can't just suddenly start thinking of all the great things in the world and it's going to make you better. That's not how it works. But it does, if you start small with gratitude for one thing, you can think of, hey, you know what, I feel really down, but I've got this really great friend. And if nothing else in my life that I have this really great friend, and that helps me. That's one thing to just keep hold of.
Not just gratitude as well, but things to, like, look forward to and, like, motivate you. Like, you think, well, if I can make it to tomorrow, then this TV show's on. Or if I can make it to so-and-so, then I can do this thing. And just something to hold on to get you to the next day.
Have you ever...
I would agree.
For me, when I'm in, like, high anxiety mode, I need routine. And I don't mean, like, dead on exact routine, like I must get up at this time and do this at this time. But when I was, when I was 23 and I was agoraphobic, I did used to get up at a certain time, actually, because I used to watch Everybody Loves Raymond at 8 o'clock in the morning. And it's not, it wasn't really about the fact that the show is amazing. It's cool, it's pretty funny, but it was the fact of doing this one thing I had in my day that I knew I could do every day that would just, it was like a grip.
Of it.
Yeah. And for me, it's pretty much always been about a TV show. It was just my thing, my one thing to cling on to. And it's an odd thing, but for me, that was a thing for a long time. Yeah. And then it was 2.5 Men. I was obsessed with 2.5 Men for a long time.
No, that's good though. You're right. I think, when I went through this, one of the things I did read, it's funny you said about gratitude. I started a gratitude journal.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because I'm like, okay, that's really going to help. But you know what? It's interesting how gratitude builds on each other. It builds on, that every day writing about one thing. The first day was hard because it's like, I'm in pain. What am I really grateful for? And then it was simple. The first day was, my God, the cats are so much more loving because they know I'm in pain. Then it became, oh my gosh, I do have a lot of things to be grateful for and a lot of things to look forward to. And it became easier and easier. And I still honestly do it because, you never want to be complacent about it. Pain can come back. And, it's such a wonderful thing. Even when I was in pain this weekend with the migraine, I was like, you know what? This is not something that's insurmountable. I am going to get better, and I'm not going to allow this to defeat me. And I think, because at times I literally felt like, is this the best I'm going to ever be? And if this is it, what kind of life is this going to mean for me?
Right.
So you've got to you have to have faith, and you have to have hope. If you lose those two things, what is there left? There really isn't. And I think that, the gratitude journal is something that I really believe in. And I highly recommend it for people who don't feel like they have a lot of hope or faith in their life, because it starts to get you thinking along a different line and not so gloom and doom. Like I said, the gratitude journal was the best thing I ever started. And it just started to get me on a path of, okay, I'm going to figure it out. It kind of got me motivated to start doing even more research and get really educated about migraines. I know more about migraines than anything. And I hope I forget about more of them, because that means I don't have to deal with them anymore. But, so that's kind of what I'm thinking. But I love the idea of a gratitude journal. I think it's
you can get apps. I've got an app, a gratitude app. So,
nice.
And I think every day you have to write 3 things that you're grateful for, and it's really hard at first. Because especially, I mean, I work from home, and sometimes I don't leave the house. And I'm like, okay, nothing's even happened today, so then you have to go back to...
that you can work from home.
Right, you have to go back to basics.
Oh,
like, well, I have a house, that's good, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes...
And that's safe.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to go back to basics, and really going back to basics is the best thing you can ever do, because really that's where everything stems from, is, the basic things. Yeah. And that's why I think the gratitude thing is such a good thing. If every day you have to write down 3 things you're grateful for, you have to find something.
Really, well, and you know what? And when you start doing it on a daily basis, you start to look for things to be grateful. And that's the whole idea, changing your mindset a bit.
Yeah, definitely.
And, it's like, instead of, because there are a lot of people, my mom is one of them, who's very gloom and doom. That's just her personality. And I finally said to her, you know what? We're going to start talking about being grateful about things. And one of the things, when I spent 6 weeks with her helping her rehab, I said, I better be number 1 on that list. Because how many people are giving 6 weeks of their life to help you recover? And, and I was teasing her, and of course my sense of humor, and I was just giving her, reasons to laugh. And, honestly, sense of humor is a reason to be grateful for, because I tell you, there's so many times in life, in the worst moments, there's something you can find to laugh about. And if you can't, Lord, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And I think the bottom line is getting people to feel like being depressed should not be something to be, it should not be a stigma. It should be something that they're not afraid to reach out to friends and family. And God forbid, we see these shows on Netflix called 13 Reasons Why. I hope to God some of these things resonate, so that we don't see these suicides. Instead, we see people having, reaching out and trying to prevent these things from happening. And I hope, if nothing else, it reaches people to say, you know what, how can I help? you're important. Don't leave us.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So
On this topic, I wanted to talk about very quickly a website called Right the Wrong, WRITE, right, as in right.
Yeah.
And on this website, I'm going to read the description for you. Right the Wrong utilises the positive qualities of social media while removing the negative ones. Here we address issues of anxiety and depression, and we explore how to deal with these issues by using writing and art therapy. It is a safe place, free from cyberbullying, where we connect with others who face similar struggles. Just to me, seems like a really positive place to go if you are struggling with anxiety and depression and you have creativity that you're not quite sure what to do with. Get in touch with them. We'll post the details on the website, and we'll also post some links to our helplines as well, just in case anyone is needing someone and they've listened to this and thinks, okay, who do I talk to? But yeah, Right the Wrong is organised by Zoe Marshall, and she is a sweetheart. I really like her a lot, and I'm sure you will too if you get in touch with her.
Sounds like
that's awesome.
Yeah, it sounds excellent.
Okay, now let's move on a little bit from the serious stuff, because we do have some new releases for you this week. Woo!
Sounds good. Yay!
All right, let's do this. What do we have this week, my friends?
Right, first of all, we have one from Snowy Wings Publishing, which is out on October the 31st. And it's Laura Janowski's Shapeshifter Chronicles. It's a 5-book series, and she's re-releasing all 5 books tomorrow. And this is the blurb for the series. Recent college grad Isis lives a normal life in a normal world, working as a photojournalist in a small city where practically nothing happens. One night she photographs the scene of a gruesome murder. A woman is found dead in an abandoned factory. On the wall there is a strange symbol painted in blood. Isis photographs the scene. The next day, all evidence of the crime has vanished from her pictures, and no one seems to have heard of any kind of murder taking place. As Isis proceeds to investigate, she's drawn into the world of shapeshifters and guardians. Secrets and mysteries are commonplace in this strange world, and as Isis finds answers about her own mysterious past, she also finds more questions. What is happening to the people that vanish without a trace? Who is watching her from the shadows? And what exactly is the key that everyone seems willing to kill for? And that's the Shapeshifter Chronicles by Laura Janowski, and that's out tomorrow. All the details of it will be on our website.
This is The Revelation of Faith Eileen by Melanie McFarlane, which is a young adult paranormal horror mystery novelette. Not sure when I think the release date is today.
No, it's 31st of October also.
October 31st.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't. Okay, there once was a girl who lived in the woods. Faith Eileen can't remember why ex-boyfriend Jake won't talk to her anymore. She can't remember the reason her daddy ran away or why her mama paces the hallway outside her bedroom at night. All Faith knows is something goes wrong every time she gets upset, and she's starting to lose control.
Okay, so that's our new releases for this week. If you want to get in touch about a new release we have next week, then just drop us an email, and all of the links will be coming to you for that just in a moment.
You can find us on SoundCloud and iTunes, and you can email us at iliterarycan'teven@yahoo.com. Find us at Facebook at www.facebook.com at iliterarycan'teven. Twitter at www.twitter.com at iliterarycan't, and also our website at iliterarycan'teven at weebly.com.
Brilliant.
Perfect. All right, I guess that's us done for this week. Thank you so much for joining us, and as we said, if you have any concerns and you need to reach out to someone about any of the issues we've talked about, then we will have some links on our website.
Remember, whatever you're going through, you're not alone, and people care about you.
Absolutely. This was a heavy one this week. We will go back to more relaxed topics from next week.
Yes.
All right, thank you again for joining us. So it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from Claire.
And goodbye from Paula.